kind of diving into part 2, where we talk about what house is falling into for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. If you have Aries rising, this is going to be a second house full moon for you. So that is related to earned income and expenses, right? The second house has to do with wealth and possessions, movable assets that we have, right? Not fixed assets. Has to do with money that we earn. Has to do with our expenses, our values, our sense of self-worth. So these are all ripe areas for letting go of things that might be holding you back, letting go of stubborn behavior or fixed attitudes. But it's also good to know, if you have Aries rising, that sometimes with the full moon in our earned income house, sometimes a source of income may be coming to an end. Or if you took my advice 6 months ago and started some sort of side hustle, asked for a raise, did something to give your income a boost at the new moon in your second house 6 months ago, you might finally be seeing that activity pay off and kind of come to fruition. So watch for that as well. If you have Taurus rising, this is going to be a first house full moon for you. So first house, of course, has to do with appearance and self-expression, right? It speaks a little bit to our personality, our behaviors, our self-expression, our physical body, and our appearance, and the role we take on in the world, how we interact with our physical environment. That's all first house stuff. And so for Taurus rising, this is going to be an opportunity perhaps for you to step very fully into a new role that you've taken on, maybe one that began about 6 months ago, or you may find that a role that you've embodied for a long, long time, or some activity you've been engaging in for a while, is finally coming to an end, So watch for those sorts of changes in your life if you have Taurus rising. If you have Gemini rising, this is going to be a 12th house full moon, right? So 12th house has to do with privacy and seclusion. It has to do with spirituality, the unconscious mind, has to do with our escapist tendencies, our addictions. The 12th house is a highly personal, intimate house. It's related to personal projects, private projects, solo activities, spiritual practices, and it has to do also with institutions of seclusion. So if you're someone who works with an institution of seclusion in some way, whether that's like a correctional facility or a nursing home or some sort of residential facility, you may find that something big is kind of coming to a conclusion or coming to a head related to that work that you do with that institution. But if you've been experiencing more of a spiritual side of this particular full moon, then you may find a spiritual realization or truth or something comes to you in that regard, or you may find yourself kind of at the end of a journey or spiritual exploration and ready to maybe think about what new direction you'd like to take in your spiritual practice coming up in the coming months. If you have Cancer rising, this is going to be an 11th house full moon for you. So that's friends and organizations, it's hopes and dreams. So this can be an opportunity to see a hope or dream, that you have coming to fruition, especially if you took steps towards accomplishing one 6 months ago when we had the new moon in Taurus. Or you may find yourself busy doing activities with friends. You may find your social life is active during the full moon. You might find that you have some sort of engagement come your way or invitation to get out and do something fun. And if you do take advantage of it, it could have a very unexpected payoff. It could have a long-term payoff for you. So if you have opportunities come your way and you've got Cancer rising, jump on those opportunities. For Leo, this is a 10th house full moon. So that has to do with career and achievement. It has to do with awards and recognition. It has to do with status and reputation. It has to do with fame, right? Your professional life. So if you have Leo rising, you may find that a professional project or some sort of career-related effort that you've been working on is finally starting to pay off, maybe coming to a big conclusion. This is the perfect time to be putting the finishing touches on whatever that is and kind of giving birth to that into the world. And like I said, as we talked about when we talked about kind of the general nature of this particular full moon, there could be unexpected benefits for you, long-term benefits related to whatever it is you're doing there, for those of you who have Leo rising. Virgo, this is a 9th house full moon. So that has to do with international affairs, right? Immigration, publishing, broadcasting, legal or higher education matters. Those are all 9th house, long-distance travel, especially, and publication and broadcasting that are either going to reach large audiences or long distance, right? So we're talking big picture. and we're talking mass media type publishing and broadcasting in that sense. Ninth house also has to do with religion, philosophy, and law. So keep that in mind as you explore this particular full moon. For Libra rising, we have an 8th house full moon. This is related to other people's money, potentially, resources that come to you through other people in your life, taxes, inheritance, bonus or commission income, insurance. These are all 8th house concerns. The occult, death, rebirth cycles, transformation. These are themes of the 8th house as well as healing and psychology and research and investigation. So if you've been doing some deep digging into some kind of obscure topic or obscure field of study, maybe you're kind of wrapping things up right now. You might be at the end of your investigations, at the end of your research, and finally coming to some sort of conclusion that the research has allowed you to draw. For those of you who have Scorpio rising, this is a 7th house full moon. So this has to do with partnership and marriage, has to do with business. This has to do with your relationships with other people in general. This can also have to do with what we reject about ourselves and project onto other people in our lives when we're talking about the descendant specifically, especially if it has contact with any planets or points. Okay. For those of you who have Sagittarius rising, this is going to be a 6th house full moon. So that has to do with work, health, pets, daily routines and schedules, your habits. Watch out for schedule changes. You may have something that you've had as a regular part of your schedule for quite some time finally come to an end, and you might find that either there's then a change to your schedule or you have got some more space and opening that wasn't there before. This could also be a habit coming to an end. Full moon in your 6th house of habits is an excellent time to give up a bad habit. Not so much for starting a new good habit if you're wanting to do that, but for giving up a bad habit, you can definitely use the full moon in your 6th house for that. If you have Capricorn rising, this is a 5th house full moon. So that has to do with creativity, children, with love and romance. It has to do with sports and risk-taking activities like gambling. It has to do with things we do for fun too, right? So if you have Capricorn rising, this can be a really excellent time to start a new creative project. So consider doing this sometime, not to start one, but to finish a creative project, one that you started maybe 6 months or longer ago. Note to self. I have several of those. Okay, I'm going to have to think about how to use this particular full moon. For Aquarius rising, this is a 4th house full moon. So it has to do with home and property related matters. It has to do with family. It has to do with your parents, real estate. Those all fall under 4th house. If you have Pisces rising, this is a 3rd house full moon for you. So travel and communication that happen local to you, nearby, not long distance. That's 9th house. Has to do with writing, has to do with childhood education, with transportation, with your neighbors, your siblings, and I think I already said your immediate environment, but if I didn't, there we have it. And so that was our final sign covering Pisces. So that wraps up part 2. We've been going over which house this is falling in for each of you according to your sidereal rising sign. We're going to now move on to part 3. And here in part 3, we're going to talk about the Taurus archetype and the themes of Taurus, and we'll go over some prompts that you can work with for your releasing practice tonight.